As you know, Mark Twain was born Samuel Langhorne Clemens. He came into this world with Halley's Comet in 1835, and he died when Halley's Comet came back in 1910. Well, in 1985, Halley's Comet came back, and I was walking down the street. I wasn't quite homeless, but I had very little money and no food, so I had to walk just to stay alive. And as I'm walking down the street, I'm talking to myself, and I find myself doing Mark Twain that Hal Holbrook did on Mark Twain Tonight on CBS, and he put it on phonograph record, and I bought the phonograph record, and by osmosis I find myself 10 years after the fact having memorized it. So I kept doing it. When I became homeless and I was hitchhiking all around the country, I'd be walking down the island, I'd be practicing my Mark Twain. So that's been 20 years since I've been able to practice it. So a couple things might be out of place. So excuse me if I make a couple of mistakes. But Hal Holbrook did Mark Twain Tonight, where he took Mark Twain's material. But I sort of morph into a second coming of Mark Twain, where I make my own jokes, as if I were Mark Twain today. So I'd like to begin. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm always sorry to have my name mentioned as one of the great authors, because they have such a sad habit of dying off. Chaucer is dead. So is Shakespeare. So is Milton. And I'm not feeling very well myself. Well, my doctor tells me I'm on the verge of becoming an old man. But I don't take any stock in that. I've been on the verge of becoming an angel all my life, and it hasn't happened yet. Oh, he wasn't a very good doctor anyway. He's only had 2 patients last year. A sailor and a horse. Well, when the sailor comes to him, he says, well, what's the matter with you? He says, well, I'm a sailor. He treated him for that, and I've never seen a man die more peacefully in all my life. Training and association can accomplish strange miracles sometimes. When I was nothing but a young lad helping to inhabit that little Missouri town, I had no aversion to slavery. The local pulpit taught it was the proper and righteous thing to do, and the doubter need only look in the Bible to settle his mind. I wonder how they could lie so. The result of practice, no doubt. Well, in those days, my true ambition was to come down the river in all my glory as a steamboat pilot. A steamboat pilot in those days was the only truly independent and unfettered occupation left on the face of the earth. The pilot house was a sumptuous glass temple overlooking the Mississippi, driving its mile-wide tide shining in the sun. On the 4 o'clock watch, you could see the summer sunrise with a massive green foliage unveiling before your eyes, with a blue horizon and a gold crest in the tops of the trees, and you'd reckon you'd seen something worth remembering. But by and by the war came, and commerce on the river ceased, and I had to find a new occupation. So I joined the Confederacy. Served for 3 weeks. Deserted. And the Confederacy fell. So I went west on the overland stage to San Francisco. I was going to be a millionaire. But I struck a disappointment there. I found I was drunk on the smell of somebody else's cork. I found you had to dig for the gold with a long-handled shovel. I had no use for a long-handled shovel. Oh, I was willing to sit by and shout words of encouragement to the others when I wasn't busy catching flies. Oh, it wasn't hard to do. If I didn't get the one I wanted, I got another one. It was all the same to me. All you had to do was grab. Well, that get-rich-quick scheme spread like wildfire. destroyed the simplicity and repose of life, created 1,000 useless luxuries, turning them into necessities and satisfied nothing. Dethroned God and set up a shekel in his place, and created a sleep which does not refresh. Oh, man is a marvel, he is. It's his idea, you see, that the deity sits up at night to admire him. Man is the only animal that blushes, or needs to. Man is the only animal with the true religion. Several of them. Why, he does his level best to smooth his brother's path to happiness and cuts his throat if his theology ain't straight. Man is the only animal that for sordid wages and vulgar ambition sets forth in cold blood to exterminate his own kind. There are slogans for this. Even though the war be wrong, we are in it. We cannot retire without dishonor. Well, not even a Bergner could have said that better. Yeah. With the result being that there's not an acre of ground in possession of its rightful owner on the face of the planet. So I did an experiment. Got me a cage. Into the cage, I put a dog and a cat and a squirrel and a monkey and finally a kangaroo. I taught them to be friends and they lived happily ever after. Well, next I got a slightly larger cage, and into the cage I put a Baptist from the wilds of Arkansas, an Anglican bishop, a Buddhist from China, a Hindu from India, and finally a Salvation Army colonel. Why, these reasoning animals had disagreed upon a theological detail and had taken the matter to a higher court. Oh, what a hell of a heaven it's going to be when all those hypocrites assemble there. Well, I couldn't find honest employment, so I became a newspaper reporter. I've often had to serve time that way. Why, I did a stretch for 2 years in Washington covering the Congress, that grand old national benevolent asylum for the helpless. Why, those men could talk for a week without getting rid of an idea. If they had been present when the deity had said, "Let there be light," we never would have had any. Say, who is the government? In a republic, the government is a servant of the people. And the people should only uphold its government and follow it if it's wrong when the nation's life is in danger. Otherwise, we've sold our nation's honor for a phrase. And in the interim between campaigns, he works for the brotherhood of man with his mouth. In the last few years since my 70th birthday, I've received all sorts of letters. And in them was a note of compliment and a note of praise. But above all and better than all was in them a note of affection. Compliment as well, praise as well, but affection. That is the highest and most dearest and final reward that any man can receive, whether by character or achievement, and I am grateful to receive such a reward. Many a year ago, I gathered an incident from Dana's 2 years before the Mass. Went like this. There was a self-important little skipper of a coastal sloop engaged in the dried apples and vegetable and kitchenware trade, and he was always hailing every ship that came in sight. He did it just to air his small grandeur and to hear himself talk. Well, one day a majestic Indiaman comes plowing by with course on course of canvas towering into the sky. her yards and sails were burdened to the plims of the line with the rich freightage of precious spices, grace in the air with gracious and mysterious odors from the Orient. It was a noble spectacle. Well, the little captain, he pops into the shroud, he squeaks out a hail, "Ship ahoy! What ship is that? And whence and without?" And the answer comes back in a deep and thundering bass voice through the speaking trumpet. "The Begun of Bengal, 142 days out from Canton, homeward bound. What ship is that, and whence and without?" Well, the answer just crushed that poor little creature's vanity flat, and he squeaked back most humbly, "Only the Marianne, 14 hours out from Boston, bound from Kinry Point, with nothing in particular." Oh, what an elegant word, that only to express the depths of his humbleness. Well, that's just my point. For in 1 hour of the 24, I pause and reflect in the still of the night, and I'm probably meek and humble. And during that little while, I'm only the Marianne, cargo with dried apples and kitchenware. But for the rest of the 23 hours, my vain self-complacency rides high on the white crest of approval. And I'm a stately Indian, plowing the great seas beneath the cloud of canvas, laden with the kindest words ever vouchsafed to any wandering alien in this world, I think. And then I'm the Begun Bengal. 7 years out, homeward bound. Thank you and good night. Well, as I said, I sort of memorized it. Not perfectly, but, I started thinking, what would Mark Twain say if he were alive today? And it just started coming one joke at a time. And I started thinking, well, there was John Paul II laid out for the whole world to see, there's a going out. And he's laying there, and all of a sudden I saw his spirit rise up, go up to heaven, where he was greeted by St. Peter. St. Peter says, "Good to meet you, John Paul. I understand you were Pope down there. It doesn't mean much up here, but Jesus wants to talk to you." And John Paul II gets a nervous look on his face. And he says, "Well, don't worry. There's nothing wrong. He just wants to talk to you. Just make yourself at home, walk around. He'll catch up to you." So about a week or two later, all of a sudden, Jesus walks up to John Paul II, puts his arm around him and says, "So, Pope John Paul II, I have a mission for you." You know how in America, that for many, many years, they told Pollock jokes? About the typewriter that missed a period, so the guy thought his typewriter was pregnant. So we're going to write some American jokes. So how many Americans does it take to screw in a light bulb? Oh, about 250 million. 250 million? Yeah, well, 247 million said, it's impossible, don't even bother trying, and don't ask me for any money while you're trying. 3 million people said, well, if you try it, we'll kill you. And then 4 old guys from the Korean War, 4 carpenters, were standing over by the wall, and they noticed this big mound of paint. So they were sniping some butts, so they just started, they had nothing better to do, so they scrape away the paint. And all of a sudden, they scrape and scrape, and there's 47 years of paint covering the light switch. Well, it turned out, you threw the switch, the light goes on, and everybody in America has a heart attack. It seems that the light bulb had been screwed in 235 years ago, but they had painted it over since November 22nd, 1963, and nobody could find a light switch. Well, anyways, that was, it's funny when I don't have a camera on me, and it's the first time you hear it. But anyways, you have that American who thought that the Archimedean screw was Greek sex. But don't tell anybody that it's a water pump because they might just try it for that. Americans are strange people. They're very fickle. I mean, like, I can give you an example. I can gross you out and just like that make you scream and yell at the top of your lungs in joy. So I finally meet the girl of my dreams. She turns to me in bed. We're both naked. She says, "So what can I do for you?" So I said, "Well, I've always wanted to taste your boogers." And the whole audience moans and groans. "That's pretty gross, isn't it?" "Yeah, you want to see the boogers." All right. So there's a guy out there who's the most germophobic person in the world. I want to meet him because we're just alike. And I want to start a 12-step program for germaphobes. Howie Mandel. He can't touch anything. So I was thinking, let's get Howie Mandel up here. Let's say, "Howie, would you eat your wife's booger for $10 million? Deal or no deal?" And say just where you thought it was gross, all of a sudden you're screaming, yelling, take the 10 million, Howie, take the 10 million. Because, well, it's very difficult to get into relationships with people like you because you never know what you're going to say and how you're supposed to react to what you said, because I don't have the same book you do. And, well, let me give you an example. There's no such thing as a second chance to make a first impression. You're taking your favorite girlfriend out, and you're driving, you gotta stop for gas, and all of a sudden you get a sneezing attack. You don't know what to do, so the first thing you do is you grab a blue paper towel with oil stains from the garage, and you blow your nose into that. She takes one look, dumps you, and you get no second chance to make a first impression. Or it could be worse. You're going along with this girl, you want to tell her that you love her a lot, you may be thinking you want to propose to her, and all of a sudden, just as you want to say "I love you," a 747 flies over, and nobody can hear anything you're saying. And you start stuttering, and well, she just doesn't want stutters, so she drops you right then and there because there's no second chance to make a first impression. Well, let's say you get past the minefield and you finally do get married. It's like going into an automobile dealership and you find the finest sedan for $40,000. It's got every gadget and gizmo on it, known to the world on it. You drive it off the showroom floor. It's wonderful. You're half a mile down the street from the dealership. All of a sudden the car just stops dead. You don't know what to do because the 6-way power adjustable seats are going off, the windows are going up and down, the horn and car alarms are going off, the engine's dead, won't start over, the radio's going on, the tape player's going on, and everything it's just nuts. So what do? You're exasperated. It's a new car. It's not supposed to do this. You pull out the cigarette lighter and you stick your finger in the slot and you electrocute yourself. Just then, everything returns to normal. The car starts up and you drive down the road like nothing ever happened. And now you know what to do for the rest of your life because you got married. Well, you know, they talk about being married like it was serious or something. But, you know, it says right there in Genesis 3, it talks about the original sin. Or what we call original sin. The Bible doesn't call it original sin. We call it original sin. But nobody knows what it is. He ate of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Well, what does it mean to eat out of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? First of all, what's a tree? A tree has roots, it's got a trunk, it's got branches, and branches off of those branches, and branches off of those branches, and twigs coming everywhere, and leaves growing all over the place. Sometimes it has fruit, sometimes it's a fruitless tree, and you just grown for the wood. But you have a tree of the knowledge of life, and a tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Well, very simply, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is when you have subjective labels more important than the objective truth. So subjectivity is really the original sin, because I can't do this. I'm too hot and sweaty and tired. And I blew my line and I keep thinking about it. And I have to write this out. But anyways, I would like to know a poem. See, this is a 3-act play with Mark Twain today. And I have a lot more jokes, but I have to write them out and I have to be a lot more prepared. And then the second part is an epic poem called The Cinderella Bra, or How I Left My Ego in San Francisco, which is lost. But I remember some of the poems, and it makes sense. And the third part is where we do improvisation of role reversal. 7 women dress like men, and I dress like a woman, and we reverse the roles and do psychodrama that's improvised comedically to resolve the problems instead of suffering silently in a quandary as to what's going on you don't know. Because the whole thing of marriage throughout all of civilization, one man, one woman, is marriage, is bride and groom in Babylon. And you look at the beginning of the Bible, it says Genesis. And Genesis means origin, beginning. You look at the last book of the Bible, it's Revelation. Not death and destruction, revelation, awakening from apocalypse, apocalypse meaning birth. In other words, the Bible is the inception, the conception, and the book of Revelation is the end of the book when the baby is born. So during this period of time, the basic foundation of the structure of society is marriage. Well, that marriage is based on the curse that you shall work by the sweat of your brow. She will bruise your head, and he will bruise your heel. He'll beat you up, and you'll drive him nuts. And that's what marriage is about, and that's what you have to be, and you can't escape it. But the whole thing of marriage is based on the original sin. And it says in the book of Revelation that, and no longer shall a bride and bridegroom be found in New Babylon. Because that's the whole story. Babylon is babyland. And Babylon is Babel. And what's Babel? Baby talk? In other words, subjective labels and denying objective truth. There is no such thing as objective truth. Everything is subjective, and then good can become evil, and evil can become good, and God is an opinion. And where the definition of faith comes in, there's nothing, nobody knows what faith is. They mean it, they take it to be just belief, but it's acting on the belief. And you don't want to believe in Jesus, you want to believe on Jesus. You want to have the faith of Jesus, not faith in Jesus. You want to be like Jesus. You want God to love you just like He loved Jesus, which He will do is if you repent of that original sin curse. Give up the subjective labels. Like Shakespeare said, a rose by any other name would smell the same. Well, that means whatever you call it, it's still a rose, but we get into fights over words where we don't understand what the other person is saying because we're too busy passing judgment on what they're already saying to us. So they don't hear what we're saying from our point of view. They're busy thinking what they're going to say as soon as you take a breath. And that's not a marriage. A marriage has to be with a dialogue, not a relationship. A relationship is just one continuous laminated opinion back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But a dialogue is where you actually understand what the person is saying, and you say yes and this, not no but. And we're a society of no buts, not yes ands. And so nobody can agree, and they can only put 7-second sound bites because it would bruise people's heads if they try to engage in a dialogue on television. But not only that, the television is the false prophet that's in the Bible that's supposed to come and deceive everybody. Well, it says, and John says, I stood on the sands of the sea. Well, what is melted sand? Glass. And I saw fire mingled with glass, electricity. And what do you see? You see through television. So fire and glass, everybody thinks, well, fire and glass, fire mingled with glass, we're going to use Molotov cocktails, we're going to burn the world down. No, it means television. Television, television, television. Nothing has to burn. There's way too much good building to go and destroy it, and all it would cause is terribleness and not the end of Babylon. Because to do away with Babylon is do away with probably true. An opinion is what you believe to be probably true. As opposed to a truth where you have a conviction where you would bet your life that you know it's true, that God is real. And that I can lean on Him just as I can lean on this desk. And you don't have any faith unless you're leaning on God the way I'm leaning on this desk right now. Or a staff, or a rock. Or running to God the way a baby bird runs to its mama's wings. You can stand on the wings of the Lord all day, no matter what is befalling you, and you'll be safe. But nobody knows that, so they turn to drugs, sex, television, cars, whatever, their work. And they have no idea of how they can get comfort from God. And most of all, in marriage, he's totally left out of the marriage bed. Well, God doesn't have sex. God doesn't know about sex, so we'll turn out the lights and do it under the covers. Well, that's ridiculous. If we have matching parts that go into each other, so does God. If we like to do it, so does God, because we're made in His image and likeness. If we like to kiss our wives, He likes to kiss His wife. Oh, I said a heresy. God has a wife. And that's my job as a prophet, to introduce El Madre Supremo to the world. And I would like to just cut it off at that point.